There is a particular stillness that settles over a man after he has been used for so long that politeness starts to feel like evidence against him. Humiliation becomes most dangerous when it has been repeated enough to masquerade as a personality. The man who is being used daily does not always look broken. He often looks agreeable. That is the corpse Fight Club dissects, and Tyler Durden arrives as the grin stretched across it. Not a stable man, not a healthy answer. A cigarette hanging loose from the mouth. A body moving like consequences no longer apply. A laugh arriving exactly where fear should be. And suddenly, every swallowed insult, every delayed boundary, every compromise mistaken for maturity is exposed for what it was. A system that only likes you when you stay easy to use. We call it patience when our resentment is still serving somebody else. We call it discipline when our obedience still earns us a chair. But the body keeps score long before the mind confesses. The jaw hardens, the shoulders lock, sleep disappears. In Fight Club, Tyler is what happens when a man realizes the table never respected the sacrifice it demanded, and that the comfort he was chasing was only ever rented by surrender. Before the first punch, before the basement fills, power belongs to cleaner hands. To the job that turns death into a cost-benefit equation. To the condo catalog that sells identity as furniture. To the support groups where collapse is allowed, but only in the approved form. Even the medical authority in the opening offers no healing. When the narrator says he is in pain, he is brushed off and sent to the men with testicular cancer if he wants to see pain. That is the world Tyler is born into. Sleepless, procedural, upholstered, spiritually airless. A man being used by every room he walks into and praised for how quietly he absorbs it. Tyler does not arrive as a cure. He arrives as a violent correction. Because once a man sees that he is valued only when he is easy to manage, he stops asking how to heal inside the arrangement and starts asking what part of himself would have to die to break it. Rule 1. Let them see the damage. Tyler's first doctrine is not random violence, it is exposure. Look at the office confrontation. The boss corners the narrator over the Fight Club rules showing up at work, and what matters is not just rebellion, it is escalation turned visible. In the finished film, the narrator stops protecting the room from the consequences of what that room has produced and turns his own body into evidence. He forces management to confront a spectacle it can no longer keep polite, controlled, or private. The point of the scene is not coolness. It is leverage through public disgust. What looks like madness is actually bargaining power. The moment a man stops preserving the dignity of the people exploiting him, the balance changes. The hidden cost gets dragged into open air until the person benefiting from it has to breathe it too. A man who is tired of being used quietly learns, in that moment, that silence was always the currency his handlers were paid in. The film repeats that logic in the Lou scene. Lou comes down to shut the club down. He punches Tyler in the stomach, then in the face, then keeps beating him after Tyler is already down. Tyler does not win by overpowering Lou. He wins by making the violence revolting, intimate, and impossible to contain. He bleeds on him, bites his necktie, clings to him, rubs his face into him, and turns domination into contamination. Power changes hands because Tyler refuses the normal script of self-protection. We know why those scenes hit so hard, not because most men would ever do them, but because many men have imagined at least once what it would feel like to make the room finally witness the price of keeping them agreeable. Tyler's first rule is simple. If they have been feeding on your restraint, stop making restraint available. And once a man learns that exposure can force consequences, the next leash becomes comfort. Because comfort is usually how he is bought back. Rule 2. Stop making comfort holy. That is why the chemical burn matters. Tyler kisses the back of the narrator's hand, sprinkles lye onto the wet skin, and when the narrator tries to flee upward into guided imagery, Tyler drags him back down. Stay here. Stay with the pain. Stay inside your body. Only after forcing him to face the burn does he bring in vinegar. The scene is not abstract in the movie. It is brutally literal. Lie, flesh, panic, command, surrender. What looks like discipline is actually demolition. Tyler does not make pain beautiful. He destroys the illusion that numbness is peace. He understands that every luxury in the narrator's old life was not merely decoration, it was sedation. The sedation is what kept him being used without ever naming it as such. Then comes Paper Street. After the condo explosion, the narrator follows Tyler to the Paper Street house. The movie goes out of its way to make the place into an argument. It looks like it is waiting to be torn down. Most of the windows are boarded up, the stairs are ready to collapse. The plumbing leaks. The electrical system barely works. There are essentially no neighbors, and the paper mill nearby makes the whole place feel industrial, stale, and half dead. The house is not a throwaway location. It is Tyler's worldview made architectural. If comfort made you ownable, then discomfort starts to feel like freedom. That is why the house has to be ugly. Clean comfort is where the narrator was easiest to own. Tyler's second rule is, remove every cushion that makes surrender feel civilized. But by this point, the doctrine is already mutating. Because once pain becomes ritual, the man performing it can no longer tell whether he is freeing himself or being rewritten by the ritual. And by then, that new voice already has a face. Rule 3. Do not worship the mask. By the time the film reaches Project Mayhem, Tyler's logic has become total. One of the clearest examples is the Raymond K. Hessel scene. Tyler drags a convenience store clerk into the parking lot at gunpoint, presses him against the ground, and forces him to confront the life he abandoned. He reads his old ambitions back to him, terrifies him with death, then lets him go with the promise that tomorrow breakfast will taste better than it ever has. The scene is crucial because Tyler now treats annihilation itself as a teaching method. He is no longer just breaking routines. He is playing God with other people's fear. That is why Tyler feels invincible. That is why he feels pure. That is why he cannot stop. What looks like liberation is actually delegation. Tyler is the narrator's second mouth, the self that speaks once shame has been locked outside. He threatens, seduces, commands, and destroys without having to feel like the frightened man doing any of it. We watch fearlessness, but the film's point is darker than courage. He is not simply brave. He is dissociated enough to make fear look like somebody else's problem. And then, the movie names the mechanism. The reveal is not symbolic, it is structural. In the hotel room confrontation and the flashbacks, Tyler explains that when the narrator falls asleep, Tyler acts. The film flashes back and shows the narrator himself giving orders, speaking in Tyler's place, and moving through Project Mayhem as the man he thought was separate. Then, the movie gives us the cleanest visual proof of all, security footage that makes it plain he has been fighting himself. Tyler is not confidence restored, he is dissociation made charismatic. That twist changes every earlier scene. The injured man built a second self to act where he felt too humiliated to move. The fantasy is obvious. If the used self is too ashamed to revolt, create a second self who enjoys it. But the fracture always sends an invoice. If you build a mask to stop being used by the world, the mask will eventually start using you in its place. The dark diagnosis. And this is where Tyler's 3 rules stop being just cinema and start becoming a survival toolkit. If we strip away the self-destruction and keep only the bone. First, let them see the damage. Not with blood, with clarity, with refusal, with evidence. Stop translating disrespect into politeness so other people can stay comfortable while you disappear. Name the pattern early. Say no earlier. Put the cost back in the room where it belongs. What looks like overreaction is often just reality, finally arriving without makeup. A man who refuses to keep being used politely is not difficult. He is accurate. Second, stop making comfort holy. A lot of men stay owned because convenience has become their religion. The easy paycheck, the easy role, the easy version of themselves that everyone likes because it never threatens anybody. Tyler's lesson, Insane Hands, is not to seek pain. It is to stop letting temporary comfort decide permanent surrender. Learn to survive awkward conversations, empty rooms, disapproval, the small social deaths that come when you stop volunteering your spine. Third, do not worship the mask. There is a version of you built for emergency. Cold, funny, detached, hard to embarrass, sometimes useful, sometimes necessary. But if that version becomes your permanent identity, anger starts calling itself wisdom. Numbness starts calling itself strength. Cruelty starts calling itself standards. That is the warning of Fight Club. The fantasy self begins as protection and ends as domination. By the climax, Project Mayhem is no longer just men fighting in a basement. It is an organized campaign aimed at destroying credit card records by blowing up financial buildings. The narrator tries to stop it, shoots himself to kill Tyler, and then stands with Marla as the buildings collapse outside the window. That is the tactical truth hidden inside Tyler Durden. Expose exploitation. Build tolerance for discomfort. Never confuse dissociation with power. Used carefully, those rules can keep a man from being used up by every room he enters. Used blindly, they turn him into the thing he was trying to escape. That is Tyler's gift and Tyler's poison. He teaches men how to stop kneeling, but he also tempts them to amputate the part of themselves that still knows why they were kneeling in the first place. And that is the dark diagnosis at the center of Fight Club. A man can survive being used long enough to become enchanted by the colder self that rises to stop it. The grin, the calm, the refusal. But the moment your safety depends on becoming unreachable to your own conscience, you are no longer escaping the cage. You are teaching the cage to breathe through your lungs.